Welcome to RCast, the official podcast of the RChain Cooperative. RChain is a complete, concurrent blockchain platform designed for maximum efficiency at minimal computational and environmental costs by utilizing proof of stake. Beyond our platform, our investment partner, Reflective Ventures, funds organizations that are working within our core mission statement to create a better world by enabling social coordination in robust, secure, and scalable ways. I'm Derek Barris, the Director of Content for RChain. Each week on RCast, I'll be talking with the founders of our portfolio companies, as well as co-op members, staff, and other figures in the RChain ecosystem about the most pressing issues in blockchain today. Please check out rchain.coop to learn more about the platform, our community, validator sale, and information on becoming a member. In 2005, I published my first book, Global Beat Fusion, The History of the Future of Music. And in that book, I looked at the computer as the world's first folk instrument. Now, folk instrumentation is defined regionally. We look at certain countries and think of their instruments, and then we recognize those instruments and how they contribute to the music, vocal styles, dance styles. There's a lot behind what makes up regional music. For the first time in the history of the planet, everyone was making music on their computers. And so I looked at a few different sort of geographical trails in that book, following Indian music up through the Balkans to Eastern Europe and over into Persia, and then the Indian influence on hip-hop, which is its own story, which I won't get into right now. Point being, this is what humans do. We collaborate and communicate very often through the arts, music being the most immediate. If you want to learn about a culture, you have fashion, you have food, and then you have the wide range of arts, but music is the most immediate. And part of the reason for that is because it's very easy to transport, more and more so as our technologies have grown. So previously we had been able to share music on our computers, and at some point we were able to create music, or at least use instruments and then process them through the computer. This gives birth to new technologies and new ways of communicating. It's nothing different than what has been happening for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Blockchain itself is a ledger, the very first evidence of written languages that we have are ledgers. They were accounting. It was ways of keeping track of grain and livestock. And so this is just another evolutionary step in this process, which brings us to today's podcast, which focuses on RSong, the very first decentralized application that we have on the RChain network. You can learn more about it at rsong.org, and you can download it there. My guests today are Keyvan Kazeminejad, who is the developer behind RSong, and Fabian Al-Sultani, who is one of our business development executives at RChain, and they will be talking about different aspects of RSong. Keyvan will get into the technology behind that a little bit more during the talk, and I'll be speaking with him first. Now, the second part is for the artist himself or herself, whereas every time one of my songs is streamed on Spotify right now with my production group, I have to wait at least 3 months, sometimes 6 months, to get my accounting and to find out what we've actually made. And then you have to wait for a physical check to come. And it's an entire process. That is going to change, and that's changing specifically because of the technologies available on blockchain and how RSong interacts with blockchain. So Fabian will explain that a little bit more, but if you're an artist or someone involved in the arts in any capacity, imagine that every time your song was streamed, your share of the revenue immediately was deposited into your wallet. That's coming. It's happening, and we're helping to make that happen. And so that's where the conversation leads to. There's a lot on the horizon right now. We're in one of those spaces where it's all new and we can see where it's heading. We're not quite there yet, but we know it's coming. And that's what's so exciting about this entire project. And what's really exciting about all of this is going to change the landscape for artists around the world. And that was also a foundational concept in Global Beat Fusion, and something that I've taken seriously for the last 2 decades of my life and my passion and my career, is looking at the way that cultures merge and interact. There's so much focus that we have in our media on disparities and distinctions between cultures and being scared of people from other cultures. The reality is most of the population share the same concerns, the same loves. We love good food, we love good drink, we love good music. And it's a way of expressing ourselves. And any technology that makes that easier to connect with other people is something we need in our life. And I believe that RSong is the first step into a new phase of what we're going to be looking at, what we call the music industry, and especially the independent music industry, where artists are more empowered to take control of their assets and creations and be rewarded for that and have stronger connections to their fans. That's all underlying what we're working on here. So without anything more, I'll let some of the people behind the technology and the platform explain where we're heading. How did you get involved with RSong in the first place?
I actually was on a vacation when Greg called me and told me about RSong and basically the collaboration that he had with Immersion Networks. It all started me joining the co-op. Greg basically wanted to make sure that as we're building the platform, our implementation of blockchain, that we also, alongside, in parallel, are developing distributed apps. And RSong is the first of those. So that's how I got involved. He had a pretty good design in mind. He knew exactly what needed to be done. So we spent a couple hours on the phone. He went through what the expectations are and what we're trying to get out of RSong. I just started working on it from that point on. I think it was back in June.
And what makes this streaming platform unique compared to currently existing platforms out there?
Based on my research, most of the streaming platforms today that work with blockchain are storing parts of the aspects or parts of the concern into blockchain. For instance, most of them basically the whole aspects of tokenization and monetization is stored on the chain, or how musical assets or streaming assets are provisioned, but the assets themselves are not stored in the chain. And that's one of the things that's different about RSong. We store the actual binary assets into the chain alongside the metadata and the user data. So it's all in a very secure space. The other thing that makes RSong different, there's a concept within software engineering, IOC, infrastructure as code, and we rely on that heavily. I mean, this whole project was basically Greg, myself, and a couple other platform developers as we needed them. So it's a very, very small team. We needed to have as much automation as possible. So RSong is built in a way that literally with just a couple of clicks, you could deploy it in any platform at any time. And that's a big plus for us. And finally, the other thing that distinguishes RSong is it's all in real time. I'm not aware of any streaming app on blockchain that could actually provide real-time streaming capabilities. And that by itself was a big accomplishment for us. Now, it would be relatively easy to do real-time streaming app if you didn't have to store the assets on blockchain. But the fact that we store the assets on blockchain and still can maintain the mobile app response time is one of the things that's unique about RSong. And
you had mentioned that besides music, you can store other assets through this program, correct?
Yeah, that's so it was one of the things that Greg tasked me for this project was that we basically want to develop a distributed app that we could extend to other vertical business needs. So from the very beginning, we looked at assets as not just musical assets. We basically look at assets as products that are coming in. So like any other product that you try to deal with in a programming paradigm, you look at a manifest that tells you what that product is and how to make a complete picture of a product. And that's how RSong looks at musical assets. It just turns out that those assets are music, but they could be anything. They could be videos, they could be photos. It doesn't really matter. What matter is that we have a manifest that tells us how to digest these assets.
And from a user experience, is there anything different that users will notice when using this app compared to other applications?
Definitely the quality of the music. I'm a software engineer. I'm not a type of engineer that put the immersive technology there. I'm from that perspective, I'm a user. But as a user, to my knowledge, there is nothing like the immersive sound. It's very interesting listening to it for the first time. So that's certainly one thing that separates us. And I think the other thing that separates us is the fact that RSong is written in a way that it may be monetized in a number of ways. We're not tied to any one cryptocurrency. Actually, we're not even tied to a crypto. We're tied to tokens. And how we map those tokens to resources is what separates us. So what I mean by that, for instance, you could tie RSong to Bitcoin, Ethereum, or you might, as an artist, you might want to come and subscribe to RSong and give up concert tickets, and we could do that just as easily. As a user, we bring in something to the market that at least I haven't seen before, and that's one of the things that makes a difference.
And you built this in RChain's language, Rolang. Can you talk a little bit about the flexibility of that and what that enables you to do that perhaps other languages don't allow for?
The way the tokenization works and the way our implementation of the blockchain and the language that we use is Rolang, as you mentioned. And it's a highly concurrent language. It does everything by nature in parallel. All the smart contract aspects of RSong is written in Rolang. What that brings to the table is as soon as a token is consumed, meaning as soon as a user listens to that music, that token is consumed, that token gets mapped in parallel, in real time, to all the wallets that are associated with that asset. So in other words, if we take that one more layer in, is as I'm listening to this music, my token is consumed, and the songwriter, the artist, people that had anything to do with that music, people that did work for the artwork, they all get paid a portion of that token that they have worked out themselves in real time as I'm listening to the music. And that's a huge accomplishment. Usually with these chains, it takes a while to come to consensus, and it takes a while for those wallets to get paid, whereas we do it as you consume the music. That's the part that Rolang brought to the table. The rest of the app itself, as far as the front end and the back end, those are not written in Rolang. I don't want people to clear on that. Rolang is not a general language for that kind of usage, at least not today. Those parts are written in, some of it is written in Scala, some of it is written in, depending on the front end platform, whether it's Android or iOS in those particular languages for those platforms.
And now that the app is live and you can download and use it, do you have any plans on expanding on it right now?
I do, and I know Greg does. This is a beta version, right? So our first aim was to make sure that we meet our goal and criteria. And since we released RSong, we've gone back and we basically have fortified some of the coding aspects that needed to be fortified. Bearing in mind that we're still developing our chain, our platform is still changing. So as more features are coming in, or as some features go away, we are adapting our song to those changes as well. So those are ongoing work. We're looking into adding more feature in terms of being able to ingest assets from variety of locations. Today, RSong works in a way that you basically drop all your musical assets into a file sharing website. And we want to be able to generalize that in a way that you could drop those files anywhere at any time. You don't have to drop all of them at once. You may drop some of them today, some of them the day after. So those are the features that we're adding in the back end. They're not necessarily things that the users could see right away, but they definitely make our song more versatile. In addition to those, we're looking into implementing search. We did that in a hackathon in MIT a couple weeks ago. And I'm working into making sure that search API that we wrote is passing all of our tests before I put it into the code base. So those are the things that are going on and every day. And in addition to those, I think the community is also looking into bringing some more verticals into RSong and developing it for videos and other things.
Over the weekend, I watched the Miles Davis film, Miles Ahead. And what was one of the fascinating things about that movie was that it portrayed a moment in Miles's history where the record company at that time, I believe it was Columbia Records, the A&R man stole his masters. And they were going to release the record and make money without Miles's consent. And what's amazing is where we have arrived in this day and age, in that if a current Miles Davis or a Coltrane or let's say Kamasi Washington records an album with all of his musicians, traditionally, as it was, I'm sure, in the last Kamasi album, he paid his musicians a day fee and they recorded, and that was the end of the business. But the fascinating thing with where everything is heading on chain is that everyone that records on that Kamasi Washington record would be able to put their virtual identity into the song. And they would all be able to receive a percentage, if Kamasi wants to give them a percentage, but they would all be able to receive, even if it was 1% of the earnings of every single time that song was played. If the pianist, there's like 2 pianists in that band, but if both those pianists were able to receive a percentage every single time their song was featured, where their piano solo was there, they would all be generating revenue. And I think the thing that's happened in blockchain that I'm so excited about is what does the future of earning money for musicians look like? Because in the past, an artist gets paid a fee and end of story. But in the future, you can be you could be a traveling musician and you can find yourself performing over in India, and you could record a local musician, and the way it would be done in the past is you give them $100, $200 to perform, end of story. They'll sign a piece of paper signifying that they will receive monies from records sold. More often than not, they will not receive that money. But with blockchain and with things like Life ID and Mycelia and RSong, the possibilities are there where artists will be able to receive monies instantaneously and for every time that song is being played. And that is something that has just never, ever existed in our history. And that's the thing that really excites me, is how this is all going to change for all of the musicians, and how people will have a chance now to actually start making a living with their music. And it cuts out a hell of a lot of the middlemen that are hanging out along the way that could take a percentage here and a percentage there. And it really puts the IP back into the power and the hands of the artist.
What you're talking about, it depends upon a technological change. And I was just talking this afternoon with Rahul Sonad from Tesloop, and we were discussing mobility services and Teslas and how it's changing the car industry. And I had mentioned how originally I was against self-driving cars because it's one more thing that takes our attention away from our environment. But the trade-off is, if less people are going to get killed on the road, then I think that's a good trade-off. Mm-hmm. And so with music recording, musicians in this scenario may not get the upfront fee, but they may do much better than that as the streams come in. And since most of the revenue is going towards streaming now, along with touring, of course, there's going to be a learning curve and there's going to be some growing pains involved. Now, one of those growing pains is going to be the middlemen ceding power. How do you see that playing out? Are the middlemen are just going to go quietly into the night?
No. I mean, it really depends on where that middleman stands in the career line of an artist. Artists will always have managers. Managers will always be there to take care of the day-to-day, the business, the administrative aspects of an artist's career. A handful of artists are fully capable of doing it themselves, but for the most part, artists usually have that handler that is there to take care of all the various aspects of their career. Where things are going to start changing, I think, is really going to be in the realms of publishing. I think they're going to change in the arena of performing rights. There will be a point in time where there will be a balance between here's the earnings that I'm able to make through the internet, specifically off of blockchain-related enterprises. And then there's the how do I collect my money when Z100 is playing my song or KCRW? And that goes through the traditional formats of ASCAP and BMI. But in time, probably like in 10 years from now, there will be entities that exist that will be versed both in blockchain and in the traditional forms, and or ASCAP BMI will be have a department where they're focused on the blockchain revenue generating space as well as that of terrestrial radio.
And do you think the BMIs and the ASCAPs are going to move on chain?
Well, if they don't, somebody else will.
I don't have an answer. I don't know even if you know of an answer for this, but I was thinking about it in terms of medical records, and some of our portfolio companies at our chain right now are working on solving the problem of having to look for your medical records all the time and find the appropriate doctors and then have them fax or email or whatever over to other people, because that still is happening. Even the fact that I go to the grocery store and I'm still getting paper receipts, I think we should be on that by now. But what happens when you have these back catalogs of artists that the BMIs and the ASCAPs control and they don't want to cede power? Do you think that this is really an emergent technology more for independent artists moving forward?
Yes. I think the world of the independent musician, the 1 million plus independent musicians that are not tied into a record contract, they're not beholden to any of the major labels or any of the publishers. Really, the technology that is rolling out with blockchain is for them. The catalogs of the Beatles and Zeppelin and Marley, somebody else is going to figure out how to unravel all of that. But in terms of what the future looks like for all of the young musicians that are unsigned and older musicians that are not signed, I mean, there's plenty of people that are creating music. The opportunity now is, instead of relying on one of the major digital service providers as your sole way of playing music and really not generating any money from it, and being able to place your songs up on the SoundClouds of the world and still not make any money from it. This is the first time ever that we're going to see that there is a real opportunity for the independent musician to start generating some money off of their music. That is if people do discover it and start playing it and listening to it. You know, I think one of the things that I'm really interested in is, what does the future blockchain social media platforms look like? How are fans rewarded? How are they tokenized for promoting their favorite bands? How will bands relate to their fans now when they see that they have super fans that are putting the word out and are helping them sell tickets, helping them generate an audience? Because at the end of the day, it's all about the fan experience and how a fan is interacting with the music of their favorite artists. And that's the lifeblood of any musician.
So from your understanding, how does blockchain either address or change the systems we currently have in place, say, for fans and reward systems?
It's the ledger. You know, it is the ledger. It's the world of smart contract. It is the ability of this decentralized network to be able to record and see the movements of musicians and fans while being able to actually reward them for the time and energy that they put behind supporting their artists, and to recognize that when a certain fan is promoting a show or promoting an album And the ledger is able to record that because of that fan's effort, 100 people bought a ticket, 1,000 people listened to the song. And the recording of that data should automatically be able to tokenize and gift those fans for their participation.
Now, for perspective, because someone listening to that might be like, well, yeah, duh, that already exists, but it actually doesn't exist. This is something you've had experience with when you try to get people to promote your shows. So can you talk about what happens right now when you have someone promote your show?
Well, if someone's promoting a show the way it is done now, per my last job over at Wanderlust, was for anyone that was ready to promote an event or a concert, we would provide them with their own unique link through Eventbrite. And based on that link, the information would be sent to their email list or their Facebook page. We would be able to record the engagement through Eventbrite, and we would also be able to see how many tickets they sold. Today, in the present day, at the end of the show, I or whoever the promoter is would go into the numbers and have to go through the process of Excel, figuring out all the various costs that came from the show, and the process could take a few hours until we decide upon what the artist is getting paid, what those promoters are getting paid, versus what the future promises, what blockchain promises, which is we can enter all of the agreements into smart contracts. And I could identify that, Derek, if you're going to promote a Bomba Estéreo show, and this is what we've agreed upon, that all of that information is built into the back-end ticketing system that would automatically reward you at the end of the show. Most artists and managers know that when they go and they perform a show, they will receive their payment a few hours, if not 24 hours later following the event. Through the powers of blockchain, it will be instantaneous. And that's one of the huge game changers. Everything can be instantaneous because of the way that new technology is rolling out.